Well, good afternoon, everybody. While Nay is sorting out some administrational issues with your overseas homes, I'll start my introduction. I can't start the presentation until she comes back because she's controlling the slides. But my name is Quentin Seller. I work for a company called Chase Buchanan, as you can see by the name behind my head. I've been in financial services now for most of this century. And I've been living in Spain in the mountains just north of Marbella for just over 20 years. So I'm well versed and well known in, used to the vagaries and the changes in the administration. And most importantly, probably the pitfalls that people can fall into through, I'll say, lack of knowledge more than ignorance, because it can be quite complicated. And Spain has 17 different autonomous regions, all of which have slightly different tax laws and rules. So what I'm going to do this afternoon is talk through the presentation at a very, very high level. There's a lot of information. I need to do it quite quickly, but there will be a question and answer session at the end. And also you will see the last slide has both my mobile number if you want to send me a WhatsApp, my email address if you want to send me an email, or if you want to book a slot directly into my diary, there's a QR code. So if you hold up your mobile phone to your screen and just scan that QR code, you will book a slot directly into my diary. So we'll now be joined by Patty, who's obviously taken over from me now. Welcome, Patty. So I thought I'd better start and say something rather than leaving it quiet. It was
Thanks so much, Quentin.
It's one of these what's it, Jeremy thingy on the television, but everything starts crashing and things go away, and it's or an Ant and Dec spook thing. So I've been talking about a few minutes.
Sorry, go on.
No, I've been introducing myself for the last 3 minutes. I know we've got a lot to go through. So if you're happy, can we just start? If you can put the slides up for me, please.
Yeah, of course. So I just wanted to apologize to everyone for this situation. I think our host just got locked out of the room, and she needed to kind of rescue herself real quick. But thank you so much, Quentin, for rescuing the whole situation and jumping on so quickly and essentially starting the webinar yourself. So I'll hand over to yourself, and just to let everyone know, in the meantime, you are more than welcome to post any questions in the questions tab on your right hand side, and we will get to those questions after Quentin's presentation. So any queries you've got during the presentation, just pop them right in and we'll be able to answer them after. So I'll hand over to you, Quentin. Just make it a bit bigger for all of you guys to see the presentation okay, and yeah, over to you.
Patty, thank you. Okay, what we're going to talk about this afternoon is very, very quickly about who we are as Chase Buchanan, what we do, where we are, and then we'll focus on to the key and the most important things on the Spanish tax system. Chase Buchanan has been around in the current guise since 2015, and we're internationally based. We are fully regulated, and we try and offer completely unbiased, jargon-free advice, and we also look after clients, not just when we take them aboard as clients, but it's literally a lifelong relationship. So we are very careful about who we bring onto the team. We need to make sure we all work together. And I'm very pleased to say that so far we've got it very, very well, very, very right. We deal with investments, we deal with financial planning, retirement planning, because again, it's not just about, or if I put it another way, my clients range from between people in their early 40s up to people who are now in their 90s. So their objectives change as time goes on. So we work with them very, very carefully, holding regular reviews and things to make sure that if these objectives do change, we can react accordingly. We deal with international pension transfers, we deal with education fees, life and critical illness cover, but also we do a lot of work with US connected persons, and that is both people who live in the United States or Canada, but also US citizens who are living in Europe, because the tax situation is very, very complex for them. So we have specialists who can focus on that side of the business. Our offices all over Europe, Canada, United States, now the United Kingdom, and also we have just opened an office in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates to cover a lot of expatriates who live over there. So now into Spain, the tax essentials. As you probably gathered when I started my introduction after the little hiccup we had, I try and keep these things quite jovial, quite informative, quite chatty, and then you get asked to talk about tax. So I will try and make it entertaining, but let's get on with it. I will cover tax residency, I will cover your fiscal obligations, the different kind of taxes, the income tax, wealth tax, now solidarity tax, inheritance tax, Modella 720, and then focus a little bit more on the pitfalls that people need to avoid. So the things that they need to do before they leave the United Kingdom as a tax resident to make the best use of the UK tax benefits, but also to make sure that when they come to Spain, we can get everything structured properly to make the best use of the Spanish tax benefits. In Spain, you're deemed to be a tax resident if A, you spend more than half the year in Spain, half the calendar year, if your centre of economic interest in Spain, like your business or indeed your dependent spouse or children are resident. And that last point can have a major impact on people who work offshore, because if their wife and children are living here, then the Spanish can class them as being a Spanish tax resident. As a tax resident, the fiscal obligations, which are legal obviously, that you must pay income tax on your worldwide earnings whilst living in Spain, capital gains tax on the gain you make, wealth tax where applicable. You have to declare, using what they call Modella 720, any assets you have overseas, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second. And also the Spanish inheritance tax or succession tax system is completely different to the UK. Finally, the Spanish tax year is the calendar year, not in the UK where it's April to April. So income tax is payable on worldwide income. It's split into general income like pension income, employment income, and then savings income and capital gains. That will come from any dividends you've got or any investments, the sale of any property. There are two levels, there's state and regional, and that's when I come back to the fact there are 17 autonomous regions in Spain and they all have little different quirks. I live in Andalusia, so I'm entirely used to that system. I have clients in other parts of Spain, but there may be people who are dialed in this afternoon who are looking to move to another region. But if you have a question, if I don't know the answer, then drop me an email or give me your contact details and we'll find out and we'll come back to you. The tax year that you have to pay it between, so for last year, it's got to be paid at the end of June this year. The rates are between 19 and 47% on a sliding scale, and the allowances are a lot lower than the UK, being only €5,500 per person. Income from savings or capital gains tax, again, is on a sliding scale, between 19 and 28%. And it starts for the first 6,000, that's 19%, and then anything over €300,000 of a gain is 28%, and that's individually. So if it's the sale of a property, then, and there's a couple, then it's 50-50 each way. Wealth tax is determined by region. Again, on a sliding scale up to 3.5% if your individual wealth is over €10.7 million. There are generally personal allowances of €700,000 per person, plus €300,000 for your main home. It was limited in Andalusia, where I live. It's also Madrid, Murcia, and the Balearics have generous allowances. But the 2 or 3 months after it was eliminated in Andalusia, the Spanish government brought in what they call the national solidarity tax, which is, they say a temporary measure. It's been going on now for 2 years. They haven't yet announced when it will end. But when your national debt is like €1.9 trillion, I don't see it ending anytime soon. You have the same allowances, and obviously if you are taxed regionally at wealth tax rates, then that will be deductible for any solidarity tax that you're due to pay. Again, I'm going to apologise, I'm going through this extremely rapidly. So as Patty said, any questions at the end, or get in contact with me and we can have a more in detail conversation. Model 720, this is where as a Spanish tax resident, you need to declare any asset you hold outside of Spain. There are three categories. There's property, there are savings and investments, and any life insurance policies or bank accounts that you've got generally. If collectively each one of these individual sectors is over 50,000 euros, then it must be declared. Once you've done that, it's fine unless something changes or it increases by more than 20,000 euros in that year. So the investments go up as the market's going up just now. You may need to redeclare at the end of the following year. Inheritance tax and gift tax, and this is probably the most complex one for people coming from the UK to get their heads around. In the UK, it's incredibly simple. There's no inheritance tax between spouses, and on second death or subsequent death, then there's an allowance of £325,000 per person. There's also an element of a main home allowance, and then the rate is 40% paid on anything over that before the estate is distributed. In Spain, it's up to the person who inherits to pay the taxes due. They must be paid within 6 months of the date of death, and it can vary depending on the relationship that you have with the person who's leaving you the wealth. A few years ago, there was an incredibly big announcement made here in Andalusia and other regions, as you can see from the slides, where people are saying inheritance tax had been abolished. That's not quite true. What they were saying is that if you're in direct line descendancy, so it's family, your parents or your children, then in Andalusia now there is a €1 million allowance, and then anything over that is a 99% reduction in the tax due. However, if the relationship is slightly wider, then in group 3 there is only about an €8,000 allowance before you have to pay the tax, and there can be a factor dependent upon that relationship as to it's like as group 3 you have to pay 1.582 times the inheritance tax that you would have to pay if you're in one of the earlier groups. This is pertinent for stepchildren, especially in second or subsequent relationships where there are combined families. So it's something that really has to be planned very, very well. And then the final group is group 4, anybody who's not related. Where this has got to be carefully thought about is that Spain don't recognise civil partnerships. So if you're in a common law relationship, if I want to use an old phrase, that will not be recognised in Spain. So the pitfalls to avoid, and I'll take a breath if I may, and a drink. Everything you've been taught about saving and saving tax in the UK stops when you come to Spain. So things like ISAs, national savings products, premium bonds, all the things that will grow tax-free, and when you take them or cash them in, you get them free of any income tax in the UK, are all taxable in Spain. Offshore bonds that are not Spanish compliant do not offer the same tax benefits as the UK do. And in some cases, so if the bonds based in the Isle of Man or the Channel Islands, which Spain blacklist, then they can be heavily penalised. The sale of a UK property will attract Spanish capital gains tax. Now, the reason for this is if you sell it as a Spanish tax resident, it is no longer your main home, therefore it's a second home, and therefore it's liable for Spanish capital gains tax. So the advice that we always give people is to sell their main residence, if they're going to, in the year before they become a Spanish tax resident. So if you sell it in, let's say, May this year, as long as you don't move to Spain before, I think it's the 7th of July, then you will not become a tax resident in that year. But again, this is something that needs to be carefully planned and thought through before you decide what date you want to move to Spain. Spain don't recognise trusts. So again, in the UK, where people set up a trust for children or grandchildren, and it effectively comes out of their estate for inheritance tax purposes, Spain will view that inheritance coming from somebody who is not related. So going back to the previous slide, it's like group 4, there are no allowances, so you can be heavily penalised. And the final point on the pitfalls is, in the UK, we're all used to being able to access 25% of our private pensions or occupational pensions when we reach the normal retirement date, and get 25% of that money tax-free. Spain don't recognise it. So again, it's important to do all the financial planning before you leave the UK, so that you're not heavily taxed on something that you weren't expected to pay tax on when you came here. So a checklist. Talk to us as soon as you make the decision that you are definitely moving here, and we can get everything planned out properly. And also remember that if you're used to working with a financial advisor in the UK, they are no longer able to offer regulated advice in the European Union. So review your savings, investment structures and pensions so that you understand all your options before you come. If you intend to sell your main residence in the UK, you need to complete the transaction before you become a Spanish tax resident to avoid capital gains tax, or at least understand what that tax would be. And please seek advice about estate planning, as the UK Spanish systems are so different. And I'm going to give you a quick personal example, which will take about 47 seconds. I'm an only child. My mother, in her will, left everything to me, so I wouldn't pay any inheritance tax in Andalusia. However, when she was 70, she remarried to a great guy who she left her house to and a chunk of money. In his will, the house was left to me and whatever remained of that money. And unfortunately, actually died 2 months ago. However, I'm not related to him because when they got married, I was in my 40s, which was slightly too old to be adopted. So I now have a large inheritance tax bill to pay. So that was just a personal example of how things change and how you can be caught out. And that's really what if all you take away from today is what to avoid, the pitfalls to avoid falling into, and plan properly for the move, then I'll be more than happy. Our strapline, it is trusted advice made simple. So that's the end of me talking. Just under the 20 minutes that I was asked to do, so I'm doing quite well. So again, you have here my email address, my office number, my mobile number. If you send me a WhatsApp, or indeed that special QR code that if you hold your phones up to it now and scan it, you can book an appointment directly into my diary. So Patty, back to you.
Thank you so much, Quentin. This was a lot of information, I have to say. Yeah. So for everyone who is concerned that they couldn't keep up, or they just want to come back to the slides and rewatch them again, do not worry. We will post that video of this webinar on our website, theoverseas.com. And you'll be able to watch it from tomorrow on. So don't worry about that too much. You'll be able to catch up with everything that Quentin just says. I'm sure plenty of this was really good knowledge for everyone who wants to move to Spain, which is in itself a very exciting journey that you're all embarking on. And I'm a little jealous because I just came back from Mallorca. So I'm hoping, I was hoping that I could stay there for a bit longer than a week. So yeah, so very well done to everyone. Very exciting journey ahead of you. And thank you so much, Quentin, for sharing all the insightful tips and advice. As Quentin mentioned, you can all get in touch with him directly. We'll also forward all the questions and all your details to Quentin after this webinar, so that he will be able to get in touch with you as well regarding your specific circumstances. And additionally to that, we'll also be sending that link and his details tomorrow to the webinar on demand, and for you to get in touch with him directly. So Quentin, there's been a few questions, more than a few actually, so I'm just going to start going through them.
I've got 22, so okay.
Now.
All right.
Okay, so Stephen asked, is there a way to live in Spain but remain a UK tax resident and pay into a self-invested private pension and ISA and still receive tax relief?
No. Well, sorry, I say no. Generally, once you're a Spanish tax resident, then you're legally obliged to pay all your taxes in Spain. So you cannot remain to be a UK tax resident. However, depending on the structure of your pension and also your ISA, then you can continue to pay into them and you will still receive the UK tax benefits on the income you pay into it. But from the ISA point of view, particularly, it actually won't make any difference, because if you want to cash it in, then you'll have to pay Spanish capital gains tax on it anyway. Where it is useful to keep it in the UK is if you're intending to go back to the UK.
Okay, that
Oh,
makes
that makes
sense. Thank you, Quentin. Another question that we've got here is from Andy. He asked, if you're transferring money to Spain, what level of tax will I have to pay?
I don't quite understand the question. If you're transferring money to
Spain, I assume, will you? And Andrew, could you please clarify that question for me, and I'll get back into it.
You can move money from the UK to Spain through, I mean, I personally use Smart Currencies Exchange, which I know also have a link with your overseas homes. Again, as a very, very quick example, I booked a trade to bring money across this morning. I sent the instruction to Smart Currencies at 8:25. By 11 o'clock, the money was on its way to Spain and was in my Spanish bank account by 1:15 today. They're brilliant. They are. Honestly, I've used a lot of different currency companies, and the guys are honestly incredibly good. And I mean, there's so much they can do to help you, but we don't have time to talk about that today.
Thank you so much for the nice plug-in, Quentin. I think the question was, if transferring money to the UK, do you have to pay any taxes, and what level of taxes do you have to pay? No
if you're moving
sorry.
money between countries, you don't have to pay any tax whatsoever.
Okay.
Okay. The tax will be on income or savings or anything else. You can move money freely between the two countries.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's it's very clear, nice and clear. Okay. Jane asked, if earnings are only generated from the rental of property in the UK, is tax payable in Spain as well as the UK?
Yes. Again, if you think of the overall rule that any income you've got from anywhere will be taxed in Spain, then that's what to work from. But you've also got the benefit that there is a dual taxation agreement in place between Spain and the UK. It's been there for years and years and years, and was not affected by the UK leaving the European Union. So you'll be able to claim the tax back that has been paid in the UK from HMRC.
Okay, perfect. Handy. Okay, Catherine asked, we are considering a holiday home and would only use the property ourselves for up to 3 months at a time in Almeria. So she said, I'm interested in confirming tax liability, tourist tax and stamp duty for such a purchase. Maybe a different webinar, or perhaps you are able to actually advise on this.
Whilst I'm only regulated to advise to people who are Spanish tax residents, obviously a lot of people I know have had holiday homes here and have then moved across. In Almeria, as it's part of Landalucía, it's relatively simple that you'll pay all your local taxes, so like council tax, there are other local taxes you pay on the property you'll pay to the Spanish or the local town hall. And then the property, if it's rented, you will pay income tax on that rental. And if it's not rented, then the Spanish actually deem it to be rented, and they'll charge you 3% of the value of the property a year as income tax on that rental, even if it's not rented.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, a good one for perhaps another webinar. Thanks, Catherine. Perhaps we can explore it in a bit more detail. for the next time. Okay, thank you. Another question from Jane, actually. Is there any instance where you can be a Spanish resident and not be liable for Spanish tax?
No. In a word.
Okay.
If you're living here if you're deemed as a Spanish tax resident, then you're liable to pay all your taxes in Spain. And it's the same in any country. If you're living there if they deem you to be a tax resident of that country, then you will pay your taxes in that country.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, very nice and clear. I've got another question here. Are taxes in Canary Islands the same as mainland Spain?
The rates may be slightly different, and the allowances may be slightly different. Okay, but the income tax, the savings tax, the wealth tax, all these things apply to anywhere in Spain. It's just that there are certain tweaks and tricks. But we have an office in the Canary in Tenerife. So if anybody has a specific question about the Canary Islands, if you just let me know, then I'll pass the details on to Adele, my colleague who lives and works there, and she'll be able to answer them probably a little bit better than I can.
Okay, perfect. Amazing. Another question's coming in. So Phil said, if we state in our Spanish will that we want the UK inheritance laws to govern the will, does this apply to the tax regime as well as the assets?
The simple answer to that is yes, you need to have that clause in your Spanish will. And so far we haven't had any cases where the Spanish authorities have not respected your wishes. So effectively Spain is a civil law country, so you cannot disinherit your children. Which means, let's say compared to the UK, where you could leave everything to your cat or your dog. In Spain, you can't. So you have that clause in your will to make sure for any Spanish assets, then they will be treated under I'll say UK law, but be careful, please, because Scotland also is a civil law country and you cannot disinherit your children. So the wording should be according to the law in England and Wales.
Okay. I've got an interesting question here from Trevor. He said, if you leave money to charities in your will, how is it taxed? Is there anything you can do to minimize the tax applied?
Yes, there are deductions allowable for leaving money to charities. There are limits, again, depending on which region of Spain you're in. And I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what they are today. But bear in mind that the other difference is that it's not the estate that's paying the tax, it's the people who are inheriting. Okay. So
Trevor, perhaps a good idea to get in touch with Quentin yourself and maybe specify a bit more what exactly you're looking for in terms of how that person is going to be taxed, because you said it's the person that's inheriting, right?
Yes, I mean, we could do a full 30-minute webinar, which is also another good idea, just purely in Spanish inheritance tax. Seriously, we could do, because it's a minefield, an absolute minefield, and therefore needs careful planning. You can get round a lot of the issues once people understand what's actually going to happen, but it does need to be very, very carefully planned out.
All right. Okay. Well, this is super interesting, especially that it differs among the different regions, etc. So definitely a good one to just get in touch with you to actually discuss the specific circumstances, because I know it can get a bit complicated. Being an expat myself, I sort of know how painful it is to move to a country and try to understand how everything works. We have another question. We probably have maybe time for another 2 or 3 questions. We'll run over a bit, but obviously all of your questions will be forwarded to Quentin, so don't worry if they don't get answered. But I will just quickly ask the last couple. So Richard asked, I have an occupational pension, having worked in NHS. Well done. I understand this will be taxed in the UK, but need to maintain a UK bank account. Not many banks allow this. Are there any recommendations?
I would always keep one UK bank account open. Okay. Now, Barclays won't let you, but there are other banks. I mean, I personally bank with Bank of Scotland, which is now part of Lloyds Banking Group, and I still use my UK accounts for bringing money across or putting money back into the UK. However, I can't open any more accounts. I can't get any other benefits from the bank. They've wanted an overdraft or a new credit card. I wouldn't be allowed to get them. But do not close all your UK bank accounts. And if you're with Barclays, then try Lloyds, try NatWest, but also HSBC. All these companies are still international. Okay. The other option is something like Revolut.
Yep. Right. Okay. An interesting question from, well, an important one, I think, from Jim is there a tax efficient Spanish equivalent to ISAs that you could transfer into?
Yes. The financial solutions that we have available to us work or can work in similar ways to an ISA in the UK. And we're actually now developing or working with other providers to develop a way to keep your UK ISA, but for it to be managed from overseas. But that is literally just on the drawing board just now, so it's not in place yet. But we have tax effective structures that will work in a very, very similar way to an ISA. So as the money is growing, then there'll be no tax paid. And then when you do take money out, it's a very, very tax effective way of actually taking an income. So again, that's part of the holistic financial planning approach. So again, it's important for people to realize that we don't just look at, oh, this is your ISA, and this is your pension, and this is this. We join all the dots together to make sure whatever your financial objectives are, that your wealth is structured in such a way that you can make the best use of all the Spanish tax benefits.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you. So Quentin, one last question and we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
Let me just look here. What do we have? So we've got a question from John. If we move to Spain after 7th of July 2024, do we become tax residents with effect from 1st of January 2025? If yes, does that mean we can sell our UK home before 31st of December 2024 without paying Spanish CGT, which I'm not sure what that is?
Capital gains tax.
Okay.
Yes, as long as the only codicil to that, me saying yes, is that as long as you haven't been in Spain for more than 183 days in 2024, okay, then you can still be classed as being a UK tax resident. There are certain other conditions, but generally that's the overall rule. The other way to put that answer is that you must sell your home in the year before you become a Spanish tax resident.
Okay. Okay, nice and clear. Perfect. Thank you so much, Quentin,
You're
for
frowning
all
at
the
me,
questions
Patty, again.
answered. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and starting the webinar and making it all appear like nothing happened. And thank you all for listening to this webinar. It was super insightful to listen to Quentin, and hopefully you all can get some good advice from him, and we'll be able to also get some more information when you rewatch the webinar on demand on our website from tomorrow on, as I mentioned. Definitely strongly recommend to get in touch with Chase Buchanan or Quentin himself and and just discuss your details with him specifically, so that you can get all your answers. Before I finish, if you liked this a bit chaotic webinar, please leave us a review on Trustpilot so we can do more webinars and perhaps discuss all these great topics in in more details. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely evening, or whatever time of the day it is where you're watching it from. And happy property hunting, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much indeed.